This is Brent with Lykins Motorsports, and you are looking at a 427 high riser. This is for a customer of mine up north, Dennis Toll, and this is going to be put in his Thunderbolt clone. It's been a while since I've laid a hand on this one. We've been waiting on some parts, namely the oil pan and a few other goodies, and just with scheduling and other engines, things have kind of gotten shuffled around. So back on this one, and my intention is to get it finished up this weekend. I don't think, I may have done a video showing a little bit of it in the past. You may remember that, or can do a search and pull that up. But it's a 63 427 center oiler. It's got the big HP cast into it. Factory crankshaft. Molnar rods. Got a set of diamond pistons, and I think we're sitting, if I remember right, at around 12.3 to 1 compression. Since it is a center oiler, it does not have any oil going to the lifters at all. And if I slide this lifter out here, you can see there's no oil passage. So the lifters are not fed, they're not pressure fed. While I have it out, we're using a trend tool. Let me bounce it off the lifter valley a couple times. We're using a trend tool steel solid flat tappet lifter, and the camshaft is one of my custom solid flat tappets. It has been nitrided, so we're trying to do as much as we can to not cause us any problems with break-in or anything like that. Kind of hard to knock on wood, beat a nitrided cam with tool steel lifters. So we'll keep our fingers crossed there. In preparation for break-in, we've got just the outer valve springs set up, no inners. So we should be, if I remember right, under 100 pounds seat pressure and considerably under 300 pounds open pressure. So I don't anticipate having any break-in issues. These are high riser heads, and they have been ported. High riser is NASCAR breed, and these are of the factory heads. These are highly sought after. These and the tunnel ports. They have not been had a little bit of work done to them. I think they flow 320, 330, I think, if I remember right on the flow sheet. So we're also using some T&D rockers. And I just primed the oil pump a minute ago. And we got way more oil to the top than what I was wanting. So I'm gonna have to redo my restrictor. I was using this, I always drill and tap. Well, when this hole in the head is suitable for a drill and tap. Sometimes they're between sizes and you can't mess with them much, but when they're suitable for drilling and tapping, I tap those and put a 5/16 set screw in there and drill a little hole in the middle for oil. This one has, I think, a 70 thousandths hole in it, and it proved to be too big, so I'm gonna have to redo that. With no pressure oil going to the lifters and up through the push rods and all that, you get a little bit more oil up to the top. So we'll fix that here in a minute. But right now, since it has been a little bit before, or since I worked on this engine, I've got all my lifters clocked at 12 o'clock. And I'm just going to do a little exercise here. I'm going to roll the engine over and make sure all the lifters spin. And I'm sure that I did that before. I just want to double check myself. That OCD comes out pretty hard sometimes. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to clean my head surfaces off and glue my gaskets on and set my intake down and check for push rod clearance. I'm pretty sure I did that as well. But it has been a little bit since I've laid hands on this engine, so we're going to do it again. Just got the oil pan on last night. It's a Canton rear sump, and Dennis's Thunderbolt has a special front suspension, so he needed the rear sump pan. We kind of, I did an engine for him several years ago. His engine that I did was actually the very first set of trick flow heads that I've ever used. And I built a 390 for him for this Thunderbolt clone, using some trick flow heads, one of my custom hydraulic rollers, and about a 10 and a quarter to 1 compression ratio, Performer RPM intake that was not ported. And when we were building that engine, Dennis asked, what do you think about those new trick flow heads? And I said, well, I haven't really, seen them yet, but if you're willing to take a shot, we'll take a shot at them. And I'm glad I did, because I fell in love with them after his engine. His 390 made 540 horsepower at 6,000 RPM. And with, stock stroke, I think we used a 391 steel crank and had the rod journals manipulated to a big block Chevrolet size. So I used some Scat big block Chevrolet rods in it. And that engine did really well, 540 horsepower, 515 pound-feet of torque. And when he got it, he got tired of seeing it sit around, so he jammed it down in the hood of his Country Squire station wagon. And I'll throw up some pictures here of that car. And he's racing that car as we speak at Beaver Springs. And that car will run down in the 12s with that 390 in it. And he launches it on slicks, and it wrinkles the back tires, and it picks the front tires off the ground. So that 4,600 pound car with that little 390 in it does awfully well. And he's rolling the gears with a 4-speed top loader. So the 390 is in the station wagon. This 427 will get put down in his Thunderbolt clone. So let's, oh yeah, so he stick car in the station wagon. He launches it, I think he says almost to 7,000 RPM. Shifts it at about 55. No, I'm sorry, I got that backwards. Launches it at 5,500 and shifts it close to 7,000 RPM with that hydraulic roller in there. All right, so let's, I'm gonna roll this engine over a little bit. Then we're gonna take a look at the lifters real quick, make sure that they're spinning. And then we're gonna get the intake gaskets glued on and set our intake on and check our push rod clearance. All right, so we got some turnage. This one's full of oil, but the circ clip's over on that side. Same deal here. They're all spinning. So should be in good shape there. All right, so we got our intake manifold gaskets glued on and positioned. And one last thing before the intake goes on, I'm gonna pull all the lifters out and lube them up with some assembly grease. Since we have been turning the engine over a few times, I want to make sure that the cam lobes and the lifters have enough oil or grease between them. And then we can get our intake on. This is a factory high riser intake. It has been ported. It's pretty extensively in the runners. So a lot of work done. And we'll get it wiped off one last time and get it bolted on. All right, so we got our intake manifold on. Oil fill tube is in, water fittings in. Use the distributor to center the intake manifold. All of our bolts are tight. Used a nice clean bead of silicone on the china walls. We're cooking with gas now. So here's what I did. I changed my screw-in restrictors. I did have, I think, an 80 thousandths hole. I drilled a couple with 60 thousandths. So hopefully that'll make a difference. I won't know until I prime the oil pump again, and I won't prime the oil pump again until all of our silicone is dry and everything is set up on our intake. I don't want the chance of, you know, filling the head with oil and it runs down through here into this drain that's like right here, which wants to dump out in the front of the china wall. So we'll leave that to later, and I'm gonna go ahead and put our push rods in and get our rocker arms on and keep pressing on. We got a CBR electric water pump to go on this one, and we're using the FE power adapters on this as well. I'll probably go ahead and get the water pump assembled with the adapters and at least just bolts in and snugged up. The inlet fittings that go are special, and they're made to not hit the fuel pump boss or the fuel pump. Those fittings are on back order, so that one and my tunnel port engine are both waiting for those. All right, next step. All right, so got everything buttoned up here. I went through and ran the valves again, primed the pump once again with the 60 thousandths orifice in its restrictors, and it was much better. So I'm gonna leave it where it is. And I think that's where we're gonna call it quits. Just one thing about, I'm gonna go ahead and put the distributor in. It's an MSD, and I've recurved it and set it up for our application. But when you go to put your distributor in, if you watch number 1 cylinder, the exhaust valve, you need it to open and then close, and then your intake valve will start to open as well because there's overlap there. So you want that intake valve to open and then close. And when it's closed, you need to start looking at your balancer. And we're gonna stop this at about 36 degrees. And that's where we're gonna put our distributor in. And I guarantee you, big glob of assembly grease, I guarantee you that when we drop our distributor in and the rotor is pointing at the number 1 spot on the cap, which is pretty close to where it is now, it'll fire right up. So that's a quick tip. Some guys like to try to put them on top dead center, and then you end up having to mess with the distributor a lot when you're cranking to get it to start. When you do it this way, it'll start up and it'll pretty much be pretty close to where you set it at. So you may just need to fine tune a couple degrees when you get the engine running. But there we go. I forgot I didn't have the valve covers. We're going with some Baldies on this one to fit the time slot of the engine. And I'm gonna go ahead and put some spark plugs in there. We're gonna run some Autolite Racing 32s because of the, we want a little colder heat range for the compression ratio. And we're about done. So I'm gonna have a couple of engines here ready to dyno, and actually got one ready to go over there, and this one will be ready to go as well. And here in the next week or two, we're going to have a dyno session and get some stuff done. So stay tuned for that. And I'm also going to be starting on, I need to get hopping on a 363 small block Ford. So I'll probably start that next week and get that done for the customer. All right, guys, have a good weekend, and thanks for watching. As always, hit that subscribe button, tell your friends, and we may do another Q&A later on. So if you have any suggestions or ideas on something you want me to talk about, go ahead and put them in the comment section. All right, y'all have a good weekend. Talk to you later.